What is going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Pod Scum. This right here, as you all know, is the podcast where we dive in to the deepest, darkest, murkiest waters with a plethora of legendary guests. I am, of course, your host, your bastard of ceremonies, the number one scumbag, Rex Ruger. That's REXXX. You might also know me as AKA the King of Sleaze, which I am, AKA the Hair Metal High Priest, which I am, and most importantly, Diamond David Lee Roth Jr., which we all know that I am. And the hard science will soon prove what we already know, that you are looking at the son of glam, the front man for the band. Just smoked a few grams. I got a million fans. I'm your ice cream man, Mr. Wop Boppa Loo Boppa Wop Bam Bam Shazam. Hot damn. Woo! Feeling good? Of course, everybody in the house looking good. Made possible by, of course, my favorite product. If you would like the quaff like Roth, then go out and purchase yourself some. Coming to you, as always, from the lush lavender lounge of love, not for much longer because I will be changing around the atmosphere here and moving my environs to another part of the house, but still currently coming to you from right here, joined as always by that guy right there, the Keith Hernandez puppet, number 17 in your programs, number 1 in your hearts, has his left hand in his pocket, because he is the one and only that I know of texting puppet. He does have his hand in his left pocket, and he has this uncanny ability to text without looking while his hand is in his pocket, because I don't let him do it, because he's supposed to be guarding the door, my consigliere, my head of security, but I let him get away with it from time to time because he does text me questions to ask my guest. He's a little shy, and he likes to save the pipes for his Mets broadcasting gig. So, with that being said, this is, of course, the No Frills podcast. You don't get no frills because here in the Pod Scum camp, we don't know how to deliver them to you. And that's coming from the heart. Plus, we give you lots of thrills, and that is looking at the handsome face of the King of Sleaze right here. With that being said, today is no different. Again, we have a legendary guest, and I am excited about it. This is a guy whose music I really love. I'm really excited about. I'm really super stoked to have him. And what else can I say? Yet another legend. And by legend, I mean legend, much like I refer to myself. And of course, he is here right now. So I will digress from all the other frivolous chat, and we will let him in here right now. Let's get down to it and chop it up with him.
Hey, what's going on, man?
How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Glad we finally got to get up, man.
Yeah. Look at us, man. Here we are, just a couple of rock soldiers with our long blonde locks flowing, man. I mean, what more could you ask for, right?
Just letting it flow. That's what you got to do, man.
Letting it flow. Mason Keck from, listen, man, Jive Mother Mary, man. I'm going to, full disclosure, I haven't been aboard the Jive Mother Mary train for all that long, but I'm hooked. I'm a fan.
Oh, man. Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're enjoying it.
And for people out there who don't know what the hell Jive Mother Mary is from North Carolina, a lot of great things come out of North Carolina, man. My mother-in-law is not one of them, but a lot of great things come out of North Carolina, man. A lot of great music down there.
Yeah, I'm pretty partial to it. I like this area a lot. You
Yeah.
got the coast, you got the mountains, you got good music everywhere in between. So yeah, I like North Carolina a lot.
I like the fact that in what Jive Mother Mary does, I hear a lot of things that a lot of different genres. First of all, right off the top, do I hear lots of shades of an influence of the Black Crowes?
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, I grew up on the Black Crowes. That was one of my favorite bands growing up.
Okay.
I mean, Southern Harmony and Musical Companion was, really eye-opening for me, for sure. Their second record.
Yeah.
I mean, I had heard Shake Your Moneymaker, but yeah, when I finally discovered Southern Harmony, it just really kind of showed me a new way of rock, I guess.
Yeah.
Me and the drummer in the band, Seth, I call him Fluff. We literally we burn up copies of that CD, man. We played it so much that it quit playing.
Yeah. When you guys get together to create, man, what's the creative process like for you all? Like, is one person bringing the lion's share of the ideas? Is it a collaborative effort? Like, what do you guys do? Like when you're going to sit down and do an album?
It depends from song to song. You know, I write the majority of the stuff, but everybody kind of brings their own thing in. You know, like I'll kind of have the idea for the song, or like say have the lyrics, but maybe not have all the sections put together. You know, so people will throw in their different things, you know, and everybody kind of takes whatever idea we have, we all try to make it our own, you know, and contribute to it in whatever way that we personally can contribute to it, you know. But yeah, I mean, most of them start with kind of with me. I would say I would, you know, I kind of handle the brunt of the songwriting.
What was your upbringing like? Are you a North Carolina guy your whole life? Was music always going to be your career path, or did you aspire to do anything else?
Man, you know, so I grew up in North Carolina. I was born here. I've lived other places. I've lived in California. I've lived in Athens, Georgia. The whole band actually lived in both those. We all moved out to Hollywood for a little while. We went to school out there, and then we moved back to Georgia. But other than that, I've been in North Carolina for you know, like I said, the majority of my life. And my dad played music growing up. You know, he had a bunch of bands in the 80s that he played in, you know, so he was kind of more, not necessarily hair metal, but Tesla, stuff like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So guitar and music and just being around music was kind of always in my upbringing. You know, like most of my dad's friends had played or were involved in music at some level, you know, not really at any sort of like national level or anything, but everybody was really dedicated to music, you know, and so, yeah, it was very, very important in my upbringing. And my mom has a great voice, you know, and so used to sing with her and all sorts of stuff, man. But it's always been present in my upbringing for sure.
Now, as a creative type, you know, what was that period like when we were all hunkered down and quarantined during COVID? Was that a particularly abundantly fruitful time for you to create? Like, how did you spend that time, you or individually or the band?
Man, you know, me and Fluff were talking the other day. It was actually like I felt like I kind of thrived during COVID there for a bit. You know,
Yeah.
it was. I mean, it's different for us because like Jive Mother Mary, I've always called it like a boots on the ground band. Like we're always going. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how we made our bread and butter, is like constantly just playing different towns, new shows. You know, trying to just meet people and do it that way. You know, but COVID kind of forced our hand to not do that. We couldn't do that, you know.
Right.
So it kind of gave us a chance to step back for a minute and be creative and do some things that we normally wouldn't do. You know, we luckily, I mean, we kind of have a tight-knit community within the band. So like kind of the one activity that we really did weekly during COVID was we all got together and rehearsed. That was like we did it. We just continued our rehearsal schedule. You know, we rehearsed every Wednesday. That was just our thing, you know, and I think that kind of helped keep sanity for one, you know, but also like we didn't want the wheels to get rusty, you know. We wanted things to still roll. So, but man, yeah, it was cool, dude. I mean, we did a record during COVID. We actually ended up playing on a friend of ours record as well that year. You know, we did some really productive stuff, and we did all sorts of live streams. I was actually looking back the other week, and I found a few of those live streams and forgot, you know, we would just kind of take chances. We actually did we did a couple Crows tunes and stuff like that, some stuff we wouldn't normally do. So it gave us a chance to just kind of do whatever the hell we wanted to, really. We didn't have to stick to anything.
So the 8 Tracks album comes out in 2021. It's 8 songs, 34 minutes. I'm wondering, in this landscape of the music industry where people are going in a lot of different directions, you know, the formula is not what it used to be. People are doing the singles route, the EP route, the full-length album. You know, that album clocked in at 34 minutes. Did you guys sit around and think, like, you know, about the release format? Do you put a lot of thought into the direction you want to go when you're putting out music? Like, are you guys going to continue to put out LPs or short LPs or EPs? Is this something you guys consciously
think about? You know, it is something that like you have to be more conscious about these days. I mean, I guess, you know, in the 70s and all that, everything was LP formatted, you know. I mean, once the thing got out of the single market and then it became like, you know, your Zeppelin era, like people wanted a whole record.
Right.
And you know, now I think it's a mixed bag, man. You know, you have people that definitely they're hitting the Spotify playlist, so you're thinking about singles. But then you also have people that are extremely dedicated I think because it's so easy to just play a song at a time and do all that, you do have like a specific group of people that are kind of dedicated to the like long play format.
Right.
And there's times like that, like some records we put a lot of thought into that, some we didn't. 8 tracks. I was kind of worried about 8 tracks because it's kind of a bad situation with the streaming stuff. But like if you put an EP out, they classify it in a whole different way. It doesn't really, the way it kind of, the hierarchy of how it looks on your streaming sites
Right.
kind of gets all wonky, so like even if it was like an EP length, I was going to try to release it as an LP, you know
Right.
what I mean, just for
Right.
that. But also, like a lot of the classics, man, like the first couple Aerosmith records, like they're 8 songs, they're 30 minutes long.
They're short. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's really a good length for a record, especially if you are going to do the LP thing, because like I said, let's face it, the way streaming and stuff is, people's attention spans are kind of short, so like,
that you hit the nail on the head. Really, that's why I think people can't immerse themselves in the in the whole process of listening to a full album nowadays. People are just in a million different directions.
Man, yeah, and like, I mean, like I said, it's kind of a full circle thing, it's I feel like when rock and roll and stuff like that was really getting going, it was a singles market, like people, the radio, it would play one song, from whatever hot new artist it was. And that's cool, and then, like I said, we kind of got to the LP thing, but I do think nowadays more so than like, because of the way people are digesting and getting their music. Like I said, I do think it's an attention span thing, which sucks, I mean,
it does.
My worry too, is like, I'm not scared of a long song.
Right.
Right. Like I like the idea. We have songs that are 7 minutes long.
Yeah.
And I mean, like sometimes, yeah, a 7-minute song is a lot of stuff, but if there's a lot of things going on and there's movement to it and, it kind of flows, I feel like that's totally cool, So, things like that creep into your brain. Like when you got a 7-8 minute song, you're like,
right.
Are people going to take the time to actually listen to this to the end?
Right. Yeah, that's why it won my heart. And new Metallica came out the other day, and I was like, wow, they're back to 7-8 minute songs again. Yeah. I mean, I think once in a while it's well, it does my heart good being a 50-year-old guy, because I very much was the type of person who would sit down and listen to an album from start to finish. I mean, I believe that all albums are kind of cohesive like that. I feel like they're meant to be experienced that way.
Exactly. Yeah. It is kind of a frustrating thing when you spend time on like song order and everything, I mean, that all of that plays into a good record to me.
Sure.
And like you said, yeah, it's an important thing to artists, if they make it an important thing to them to listen to the record front to back and kind of really get an idea of how it ebbs and flows. You know what I mean?
Now, forgive me for not knowing this, but when I went to my Apple Music and was digging around for more music by you guys, I found an album in 2009, and then an album in 2019, and then of course 8 tracks. Did you guys take that long of a hiatus in between albums, or is there just not some stuff that the platform is carrying?
See, well, there you go. See, like that has to do with the EP thing.
Okay.
You're on Apple Music, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So Apple Music classifies singles and EPs in a whole separate thing.
Okay.
So there's actually 2 EPs that came out during that time.
Okay.
That if I have both Apple Music and Spotify, but just this year, for no particular reason other than every time my friends send me a song, it's on Spotify. So I got Spotify, but
yeah,
I'm pretty sure Apple Music, if you go to like, they have a thing specifically for singles and EPs.
Okay.
But yeah, so there should be another 10 or 12 songs on there maybe that you haven't heard. And yeah, during that time, we were doing all sorts of stuff at that time. That's when we were living in LA and then in Athens as well.
Yeah.
So like, just to give you kind of like a history of the band, like me and Fluff, the drummer, we started the band when we were like 14. And I just turned 31 on Monday. So we've been doing this band for 17 years.
Wow. Happy birthday.
Thanks, dude. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And, we started as a 3-piece, and then like right around the time we graduated high school, our friend Schultz kind of moved back to the North Carolina area, and he started playing with us. So for the last 12, 13 years, we've been doing a 4-piece thing. And And yeah, man, you know, we put out one record as a 3-piece, one EP as a 3-piece. And to be honest, I don't think that first EP is on any social media or any streaming platforms. I might at some point go back and release it. But we were really young when we did that. We were like 15 when we did that first EP.
And does it help? And does it help when you guys are all friends though? Because obviously, being in a band like with friends, you know, it's kind of nice when everybody's, you know, kind of rowing in the same direction, so to speak. It's probably good. It's probably, you guys are probably all good for each other's morale, because obviously it can be very daunting these days in the music business.
Man, yeah, you know, and like I think like we'll have people that will be like, man, there's something about your band. You know, there's something different. There's something specific about your band, and we can't put our finger on it. And I think a lot of times when people say that, what they're picking up on is that we all knew each other growing up, you know, because I mean, it does have a different type of camaraderie, and it means something a little different to us, you know. It's like in a world like, and obviously, you know, I mean, there's no right way to do anything, but in a world where like things are so disposable and so interchangeable, and that it really does mean a lot to me that we've kept this the way that we have, and that like we all grew up together and know each other on a personal level more than just playing in a band together. You know, that means something to me, and I think I like to think it carries some weight that we've kept it going like this, you know.
And I do agree with you in reflecting in the music, because there's something that's very familiar and kind of warming to the soul when you listen to these songs. They're very you know, they're very Americana. They're very heartland. You know what I mean? Like they're very, you know, it sounds like something that, you know, that would just be playing, you know, in the soundtrack of just life. You know what I mean?
Man, I'm glad you say that, dude. Yeah, you know, because like I think one thing that people are always like, what do you classify yourself as? You know, and it's like, I don't really know. It's hard to say, but like I would say, like, you know, Americana roots, like we just kind of call ourselves American music, man. You know,
well,
it's like
sometimes the music business likes to put things in genres and subgenres and neat little boxes. But I mean, I made notes. I mean, you know, I can certainly hear where there's a rock appeal, a soul appeal. I could see where it would appeal to country fans. You know, even some elements of folk music in there. You know, I could certainly hear all those elements.
I've always called it soul and roll.
Yeah.
You know, like anything that's got some heart to it, man, you know, like, I mean, that's like the common thread between like, I mean, all music that people love, from, you know, rock and roll to country to punk, whatever, man. Like, you know, what people really want is they want like to feel something, and they want truth. You know, it's funny. Like there's like a huge, like, I always like, at first I couldn't see, there's like this big transition of like a lot of people that I knew growing up that like loved punk music and like hardcore music, and like all this stuff. Now they all love like really like traditional country and these type things. And at first I was like, dang, that's like a weird transition. And then like I got to thinking about it, you know, and it's like they're trying to do the same thing. It's just a different way of they're delivering it, you know. Like it's all about just feeling what you're saying, and that's really what we try to do at the end of the day. Like, you know, the songs that I write and the songs that we write, they're oftentimes true stories. You know, like we got a song, you know, the Burger King song on the new record, like
very catchy.
You know, yeah, man, thank you. I'm glad you think so. And you know, it's kind of like, it's funny because it's definitely a extremely lighthearted song. You know, there's like obviously, you know, like jokes and all sorts of stuff going on in there, and it's about Burger King for God's sake, so it's got to be somewhat lighthearted, you know? But it's also like a really serious song to me, man. You know what I mean? Like all that is like, all the stuff in that song is true. Like we were going up to Illinois playing a gig, and like we were in this tiny little town, and it's this town that historically they've always been super good to us, man. All these people come out and see us, and like we were sitting there in the parking lot, and we're like, what are we going to eat? You know, it's like, oh, well, they got a Burger King. It's right next to the Dairy Queen. And there's a Taco Bell by our hotel. You know what I mean? So it's just like, you know, it's like all the stuff. I like to think that plays an important part in our music, and shows that, you know, that it's true. It's what we're feeling and what we're doing.
And before we move on further, you know, for the audience out there, will any other fast food chains receive their own song?
Man, you know, let's see what happens with Burger King.
Okay.
No,
fair enough, man. I mean, I mean, you know, you started with a good one, man. And I like that you bypassed McDonald's, because I've always been more of a Burger King guy myself, too. And there are references, obviously, as you mentioned, Taco Bell and Dairy Queen. There are certainly other restaurants that do get their names mentioned in there, but in the title, it is the Burger King song. So
that's right. You know, everybody always in North Carolina questions. There's a couple local chains. There's like Biscuitville, which is huge around here.
Yeah, I'm in upstate New York. I'm in upstate New York. I don't have any of those cool chains that you guys have.
Man. Yeah, you know, when we were living in LA, we'd tell people about Biscuitville, and they're like, "Wait, there's a town where you Biscuit." And we're like, "No, you're no." But yeah, you know, so I do get that question. You're gonna put Biscuitville in a song, and the answer is, if they will give us free biscuits for life, I will gladly put Biscuitville in a song.
Sure. And does Burger King crawl out from any kind of rock and threaten litigation when you mention their name in a song?
Man, you know, I wish that they would pay that much attention to us, you know.
Yeah, because sometimes a good lawsuit can really catapult a band.
That's right, absolutely, you know. And yeah, you know, I mean, if they sue, I would have to countersue for 1 million whoppers, I think. So
yeah, that's fair.
It's
fair.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Now, one thing that I love following you on Instagram, that I certainly hear elements of it in the Jive Mother Mary music, but it seems to be you put up a lot of videos of you really playing a lot of blues guitar. You know what I mean? Like, what's your connection to the blues? Just real stripped down blues stuff.
Man, you know, it's just like, I think the blues is the heart of everything.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, sometimes it's hard to kind of draw that direct line to maybe some modern music and stuff like that. But I think at the end of the day, you know, like it gets back to that thing we were talking about earlier. There's a soul, there's a feeling to things, you know, and that's
right.
That's something that will always keep the blues relevant. It doesn't matter what time, you know. And I grew up on the blues, and I think, like, as a guitar player, I think it's a basic building block of all music. And you know, that sound just kind of called to me. You know, when I was younger, it was like the electrified blues, you know, Jimmy Page and Jimi Hendrix and all that stuff. And obviously I still love that stuff, but you know, as I get older, I learn to appreciate the more acoustic blues and the finger style and that type stuff. And you know, it's interesting, man, like here in North Carolina, we're in what they call the Piedmont. Like where I'm from is kind of what they would call like the hills of the Appalachian Mountains. It's not really mountainy here, but you know, pretty rolling hills, and there's a type of blues called Piedmont blues. You know, and there's a couple famous blues songs that are from right here in the area, you know. So sometimes it's hard not to feel connected to something that has ties to where you are, you know.
Just watch it around those Appalachian Mountains, though. You don't want to get pulled into one of those snake handling churches.
That's right, absolutely, man. I've always been a little
don't take up those serpents. Don't take up those serpents. They'll bite you right in those guitar playing hands. Don't do that.
That's right. You know, I'm not a snake fan, man. You know, if they stay away, then there's no problem, you know.
So I'm curious, when you've got these catchy songs like this, and obviously I touched on the music industry being a lot different than the formula that I remember back in the 80s, when bands would just be plucked up by a label and get all this money thrown at them for videos and albums.
Right.
Schlepping them around the world to tour. Where do you go nowadays? Like, what's the mark of really finding success? Like, what is it? I see bands are still putting up videos, even though now it's YouTube rather than MTV. Is it getting a hit song? Is it landing on a great tour? Like, what's the goal for Jive Mother Mary?
Man, you know, I mean, like, as a band where we are, you're always wanting to get like picked up on bigger tours and things like that. But like at the end of the day, man, I think like modern success in the music industry, there's kind of different levels of it, man. I mean, like, obviously you're always going to have your like breakthrough people, like your, you know, Taylor Swifts and all that are this unattainable thing, you know, it's cool to see that music is you can still do that if you're, you know, a certain whatever. But I think like success for most musicians has kind of definitely changed. It's just like being able to support yourself doing your thing and live comfortably and really just be able to like find a core group of people that appreciate what you're doing.
Right.
You know, like, I mean, it used to be like you're saying, you know, it used to be labels kind of threw just money at things, and like certain things would get picked up just because they looked a certain way or they fit in with a certain thing, you know. And like the one good thing I will say about like new streaming and like the way that things are now is like you can bypass that hierarchy of all that if you do it right and you connect to somebody, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to have Capitol Records putting $10 million behind you if you do it the right way, or like, and you know what I mean? Like, it's interesting because like something that I have been considering recently and like just thinking about a lot is like, I don't want to use the term disposable, but things are so quick to go by in this social media age that like, you know, you think of like there's a band called Jellyfish from the 90s. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but like they spent $1 million on a record, and like, I mean, amazing record, but like they spent $1 million on this record, it went nowhere. And like, I think about that in the sense of like today, it's like, even if you had that much money at your disposal to spend on a record, it wouldn't make sense because things go by so quickly. You know what I mean? It's like,
you don't get a return on your investment, really. You know,
exactly. Yeah. You know, like in today's world, like a well-placed YouTube video or YouTube channel or like a TikTok video or placement in certain things can do more or just as much as a record and putting $100,000 into it. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's an interesting thing, man. You know, like, I'm not the best at the modern side of music, the social media aspect and all that. I try to keep up, and like, you know, it's weird. I kind of hit like a weird lull in my age group where like I was on the forefront of all the social media stuff, but like never, you know, I never expected it to be as important in the music world as it is. So like, you know, I was like growing up, I was like, I'll just play guitar. Facebook is, you know, I get it, but I'll just be playing guitar. You know,
Who needs it, right? And all of a sudden, everybody needs it.
It turns out it's really important as a musician, you know.
So you know, you may or may not be on record somewhere. I'm sure you are if you've done other interviews. And I always hate to word it, the dreaded influence question. So, but who are some guitar players, as a guitar player yourself, who you just really love listening to? Who are some guys?
Oh, man.
Just, you know, that every time they're playing guitar, you hear them on the radio, you hear an album, you know, your ears
immediately
tune in. Yeah.
Man, so like I always say my number one influence growing up was this guy named Audley Freed. And Audley is like one of those dudes that you've probably heard, but you know, you don't know. He played with the Black Crowes for a couple years on a record. He plays, I think his current gig, I think, is Sheryl Crow. But he's a North Carolina guy, and he was in a band called Cry of Love. In the early 90s. And actually, that's where we got our band name, was a misinterpreted lyric from a Cry of Love song.
Really?
But yeah, check out Cry. I always tell everybody to check out Cry of Love.
I will do that. Yeah, absolutely.
Check that out for sure.
Now, when you say that this guy means a lot to you in guitar playing, like, what is it that you tap into as a guitar player? I know some guys, and I'm not a player myself, some guys are into rhythm, some guys are into lead, some guys are big into tone. Like, what is it that you listen for that really gets you excited about a guitar player?
Man, kind of all of the above, you know, like, for Audley, I mean, he was one guitar player in the band, you know, so killer rhythm player, killer lead player, awesome tone, and you know, could kind of cover all the bases. But you know, I mean, you know, when it comes to like what grabs you about specific things, it can be different things for different people. You know, I mean, like I love Leonard Skinner, obviously being a Southern boy, you know, but like. You know, like for example, Skinner, like the thing that I love about them is the interplay between the guitars. You know, like I really find that important if you're going to have multiple guitars in the band.
Yeah.
And I try to do that in our music. You know, it's really guitar heavy music at times, our songs. So I try to make sure the guitars are having their own role and not stepping on each other, you know, and like Skinner is like, dude, man, I mean, to think that they had 3 guitar players doing as much as those guitar players were doing.
Yeah.
And also the other thing, like their bass player, dude, their bass player, he's not just going doom, 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 doom.
Right.
You know, I mean, he is moving.
There's a lot going on there. Yeah.
Yes. And to just think that the 3, 4, if you count the bass player, just the way that those dudes played so melodically and had so much going on, but never stepped on each other's toes. And also, speaking of tone, they all had their own unique tone.
Distinct.
You know what I mean? Yeah, because that's a very important thing. If you're going to have multiple guitarists in a band, you don't want all of them to sound the same. You know what I mean? You want some actual tonal variety. And man, you know, I'm a guitar nerd, man. Like first and foremost, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
I love music, I love writing songs, but like I just nerd out to anything guitar. Like I have 20 something guitars. I have more than I ever should, but
Yeah.
you know, my current favorite guitarist is his name's Tom Bukovac. And actually, you know, it's funny. He kind of shows you like the best of both worlds. Like he's played on so many modern country hits, everything from Faith Hill to stuff that's on country radio now.
Yeah.
But he's like a huge Steely Dan and Genesis and like
Oh, okay.
Frank Zappa and fan of stuff like that. You know, like
Some
it just
prog
really,
stuff. Yeah.
dude. He's just like, I mean, he has a channel on YouTube, homeschooling, and like even if you're not a guitar player, it's just cool to watch because.
Yeah.
You know, in today's like social media world, as we've talked about a couple times, you know, there's like these like, it's almost like this 1 minute trend, you know, like how much can you fit in a minute? How like how cool of a guitar lick can you play in 1 minute, you know? And that really like it detracts from, as we were talking about earlier, it's like when you're thinking about a 7-minute song, thinking about having to fit all of this into this 1 minute box, that really kind of detracts from that, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And like, you know, it's funny, like I think that's the first thing that drew me to Tom Bukovac was like, not only is he like one of the most amazing guitar players you'll ever see, but like he just totally rejects all the current social media stuff. You know what I mean? Like he's just
fucking
like
the trends. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He's like a very begrudging YouTube celebrity right now.
He's
you know
going
what I
along
mean?
kicking and screaming.
Yeah, exactly. It's like every video is like, I'll quit doing this. I swear to God, I'll quit doing. You know what I mean? It's like, you know.
And now, what about touring? When you guys go out and tour, you know, obviously, you know, and I hear on here from a lot of musicians, a lot of whom I've been following for, you know, the better part of 20, 30 years, you know, since I was young. And I guess in my naive sense of not being a musician myself, you know, these people pop up on interviews and I think, wow, these guys, you know, they've been gracing stages for years and years. They've got to be financially okay. And then something will perk up where they'll say, you know, they have a day job. And I guess it just kind of throws me back a little bit. So when you guys tour, does that come into play with, you know, how you guys kind of plan out your itinerary? Is everybody free to go tour, or do you got to really handpick your dates? How do you guys work?
So, you know, we're pretty lucky that everybody is like, everybody that has a job situation, they're extremely kind of lenient for what goes on. Like, I just teach lessons, guitar lessons as my side gig, you know? And like our other guitar player, Schultz, he works at a restaurant, but you know, the guy who owns the restaurant is also an amazing musician. So he
gets it.
Is totally understanding of what we're doing, you know, and like, you know, and so I'm thankful for situations like that, you know, and our drummer actually, he just recently moved to Nashville. So he just picked up a side gig. It's his first job he's ever had, you know, in the 17 years that we're doing the band. But again, you know, like that's a situation in a town where like everybody's playing. So they're understanding of that. And, you know, we for the most part, we'll oftentimes just do like maybe 2 or 3 day runs. But like, you know, for May, we have 10 days between May 5th and May 20th, you know. So when we do have a stretch for a couple weeks where we're really gone, we are lucky that, you know, the guys that do have jobs, their higher ups are pretty lenient and supportive of what goes on, you know.
So when you actually sit down to write and create, like, what's your creative process like? Are you somebody that just ideas are just, you know, popping into your head all day, or do you set time aside? You know what I mean? Do you have to set a certain ambiance? Do you go to a certain room in the house? Like, what's your kind of ritual like for creating?
You know, like the longer I've done it, the more I've tried to like figure out what my process is, or hone in on what the process is. But you know, a lot of times, man, it's just like when inspiration strikes, you know, and that might be like, it honestly might be at any time, man. It might be while I'm like playing guitar. I've written songs like from sitting there. It can vary from playing a guitar riff and sitting there and like figuring it out as you're sitting there playing, to having, you know, a lot of times I'll have riffs that I hang on to for 2 years, you know, and then like it's like almost like your brain's like, it's not the right time, and then one day you'll play that riff and you're like, oh wait, this makes sense now. This is what I should do with this, you know. Right. And then you know that there's other times where like I'll be sitting in the car and writing a song without a guitar present at all. You know, it totally just depends on like what the inspiration is and what the mood is, you know, like a song on the new record, Hope It Ain't That Bad, off 8 tracks. I wrote that song's about like, we had 2 hurricanes hit in like a period of like 10 days down here.
Yeah.
And like, obviously people were just losing their minds. It's pandemonium, you know?
Sure.
And so I'm literally sitting in line at the bank trying to like get all the gigs we had just done the week before. I'm trying to deposit the checks and get everything done and straightened out. And I see the bank line, like I already see the line of cars when I'm pulling there, and I sat there in the car and I went, damn, I hope this ain't that bad. And like I'm sitting there, you know, waiting in line. I'm like, hope it ain't that bad. You know what I mean? Then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, okay, you know, or like, man, you know, there's inspiration is just all over the place, you know. I mean, it's like the Burger King song I was saying earlier, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we were looking around and how that started as a joke. Like I was singing, I don't know if you're familiar. There's a dude from Texas. His name's Robert Earl Keen.
Okay.
He had a famous Merry Christmas from the Family was probably his biggest hit. It was like a mom got drunk and dad got drunk at the Christmas party. You know, real incredible songwriter. But again, he knows how to use comedy and stuff like that for you know, for maximum effect. And I started singing that line, the first line of the Burger King song, like in his voice. He's got like a Dylan-esque voice, you know. Yeah,
nasally.
We were sound checking. I'm going, they got a Burger King right next to the, you know. I mean, it started out as a joke, you know, and then like by the end of the weekend, like I got home, I was like, shit, this is like stuck in my head, you know. So
the
like
best songs always are though, right? The good ones.
Yeah. So that's a thing. That's another thing, you know. I mean, I'll come up with a chorus or a verse or something and kick it around for forever, and like that's almost like your own way of like ciphering through what's good and what's bad. You know what I mean? If I come up with a line or something, I'm still singing it a week later. I'm like, okay, maybe I should take that to the next step. You know?
Yeah. Now, the one song on there that particularly tugged at my heartstrings, and I'm not even really sure why, and I usually don't pander to ask, you know, meanings of songs and stuff like that, but I really love Drive Me Up to the Moon.
Yeah, dude. So like, you know, that song, that's an interesting song. So that song is probably not to anyone else. You would never know unless I'd said it, and it probably is just only tied together in my mind. But that song is tied together to the last song on the previous record, the record before 8 tracks, which is called The Long Odds.
Okay.
And like I said, I mean, the lyrical content is not exactly the same, but like, you know, I guess to explain Drive Up to the Moon, I'll talk about that one first. You know, that one was written, the song I Can't Get to Sleep was written, I'd just gone through a pretty bad breakup, you know, long-term relationship, and like, it was from the perspective of the other person in the relationship, you know. It was like basically me trying to see their point of view, you know. And then like Drive Up to the Moon was kind of the same concept in my head, as far as like, it was just like, again, looking, you know, that like classic thing of like, oh, you're looking at the same moon that I'm looking at, you know what I mean? Like that thing, you know. And it was like, but in the same sense, it wasn't like a romantic way of that. It was almost in a way of like, all right, yeah, we're looking at the same moon, but this is like, we're in 2 separate worlds here. And like, I hope that I can stick the landing. I hope that I'm figuring out what I'm figuring out. And, you know, I hope you can figure out what you're figuring out, you know? But that song, man, we were playing a gig outside of Atlanta. And we didn't really know what we were getting into. Like, we're looking at it, like it's labeled as this amphitheater. I look it up online and I'm like, damn, this is a really nice amphitheater we're about to go play, you know? So we get to the place where the amphitheater is, and there is some sort of like family festival going on, but it is very much seems to be themed for like children, like young children, you know. There's like Disney characters walking around, things like that. And I'm like, okay, well, this is kind of maybe a strange place to book a rock band, you know. But you know, we're about to play this cool amphitheater, you know. And then they're like, oh, well, see this little tiny stage over here in the corner. Yeah, that's you guys, you know. So
Oh,
we're like setting up in this just tiny, I mean, man, something that should have been a drum riser. We're all cramming on here and just like, it was not the place for us to be playing,
yeah.
But either way, it's still, it was ended up being a fine gig, But on the way home, we were driving back from Atlanta. The gig ended early, and we just said, "Hey, we'll head on back to North Carolina." And I was driving back through like Greenville, North Carolina, Spartanburg area, and it's kind of in the mountains, and like everybody in the van was asleep but me. I was driving, and just the way that the landscape was, the moon looked as big as I've ever seen it in the sky.
Yeah.
I mean, just like it looked like, I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, is this it? This is the moon, it's like the moon about to come in on us, and like it just was so freaking stunning up there, man. Like I said, I just like wrote the song right there sitting in the car. Like, I mean, obviously when I got a guitar, a few things changed from what I'd had in the car, but I mean, seriously, just kind of just sitting there in the driver's seat, everybody was asleep, and I had a few hours to myself, and I just kind of sat there and mulled it over in my head on the way back home, and it just, so again, like, that song is obviously about a bigger picture fictional thing, but it was a true story. I wish I could drive up to the moon. At that point, it literally looked like I was just, if I just pointed it north, I would have got there in a couple hours,
And I'm pretty sure throughout the history of rock and roll that a breakup or two have certainly been the impetus for some great songs. No doubt about that.
Yeah, man. I mean, you gotta have some pain every once in a while
Sure.
to have good art. I joke around with people about that sometimes. It's like, damn, you gotta have some good pain to have something to talk about.
Yeah. So of course I would be remiss if I didn't ask when to expect any new music from you guys.
Man, we've been fooling around with some new stuff. We got some new tunes in the works, and we just need to get a release plan together and figure out how we want to release it, and what kind of a time frame and all that stuff. And I'm thinking, as you were saying earlier, the long play format versus singles and all that. You might see a couple singles from us before you see a record or anything. Just to try something a little different than we normally do.
And then I guess our next question is, how do we get Jive Mother Mary world fucking domination? Who do we gotta
Dude, Jesus.
I mean, who do we got to gravel to right now on here? Who's got to pick us up for a tour? Chris Robinson? Who do we got to hit up here for a tour?
I mean, Jesus, I've been listening to Black Crowes for 25 years. You'd think they'd pick us up on this new tour, right? Come on, Chris and Rich. Come on, man.
Come on, Robinson Brothers. The guy wore out numerous copies of Southern Harmony, right? I mean,
on compact disc. They claim,
on compact disc.
They claim that's not possible.
Yeah. Well, and you are here to say that it is. It is.
I think I did it. Yeah. I mean, I probably dropped it and scratched it a few times. That probably didn't help matters, But.
Now, what about now? Just hear me out here, because obviously, as you can tell by the blonde hair and the poster in the background, that you are also dealing with rock royalty in the form of one David Lee Roth Jr. And I hope you can.
Oh, absolutely. I love it.
And now, what about a solo career? And now, hear me out here, because this is something I rolled around when I was going to be talking to you, where you just title the band KECK. And then what we do is we take songs that have the word kick in them and we change them to KECK. Now, hear me out here. How about KECK Out the Jams?
I'm here for it, man. That's right. KECK Start My Heart.
KECK Start My Heart was on my list. I love it. How about kecking it old school? And we do some retro tunes.
You know what? I'm here for that, man. That's
maybe you even throw a little Sinatra in there with a little "Ain't That a Keck in the Head."
That's right. Yeah, as a fellow once said.
Yeah,
man. Yeah, you know what? I like that idea.
I'm rolling them right out for you. I'm looking at the bigger picture here.
We always joke around. There's a little town where we're from called Mebane.
Okay.
And we're like, oh man, would you know my name if I saw you in Mebane? I mean, it just writes itself.
Yeah, it does.
We've been joking around for forever about it would be a very small market, but if we recorded a batch of songs, we could. However many people there are in Mebane, I feel like we could sell half that many CDs.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. I'm sure.
So maybe
I'm sure many people have driven right through Mebane and never even knew they were there.
That's absolutely right. Yeah.
You know. Listen, man, you've been a great sport, and I appreciate you spending this amount of time with me. And you've converted me, man. I'm glad that I stumbled across the music on, the one thing that I will say about the music platforms in closing here is that once in a while, when I'm searching up other bands, I do love the fact that they will suggest other, other similar sounding bands at the bottom, of the list. That is one great thing. That is one great thing that Apple Music does. And I don't know if it's an algorithm or what it is. I'm not really that tech savvy, but however you find these bands, it's great because you do have a tendency sometimes to get stuck in a rut. Like, whereas if you do have time in your busy day to listen to music for your leisure purposes, you do tend to fall back on your old staples and not go out and discover new music.
Absolutely.
It's very easy to do.
Man, yeah, that is one benefit. You're right, of all the streaming platforms. Apple does the suggested artists, Spotify does that. I mean, I find myself all the time listening to the Discover Weekly playlist on Spotify. It's all stuff that, I mean, Spotify and Apple Music are fairly similar, and it's just stuff that obviously based on other things that you've listened to, but things that maybe you haven't heard. And oftentimes what it ends up being is half stuff that you haven't heard and other stuff that you're like, I forgot about this. I need to listen to more of this,
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, man, I'm glad you found us. And man, yeah, if anybody wants to listen on, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube, JIVEMotherMary.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. And man, yeah, thank you so much for having us. And
I appreciate you being here, man. And I will be looking forward to more music, and I will be flying the flag for you guys and imploring people to listen, man. I think these are great songs. You guys seem like a great bunch of guys. As long as the rest of the guys are like you, which I imagine they were, you seem to probably draw a lot of like-minded people as your friends.
I try to keep good company, man. I try to keep good company,
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it, and the songs are really great, man. And I wish
thank you, man. That means a lot to me.
Yeah, I really do. And hopefully we can keep in touch. And when you got things cooking, we'll come on here and we'll do it again.
Absolutely. When we get some new music ready to release, we'll get something cooked up, man.
Look forward to it. Thanks a lot, Mason. I really appreciate it, buddy. Thank you. It was nice talking to you.
Absolutely. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take it easy, brother. Thank you.
See you, man.
Later.
See you.
There he goes, folks. That is Mason Keck. He is the guitarist and vocalist of a band from North Carolina called Jive Mother Mary, very akin to Southern roots rock, i.e. Black Crowes. You can hear shades of just great classic 70s arena rock. As I mentioned, you can hear elements of blues, soul, country, folk. I think it will appeal to a lot of people. I implore people to go out and listen to this band, Jive Mother Mary. Their last album was 2021, an album called 8 Tracks, and it is in fact 8 tracks. And I'll tell you, very catchy, great hooks, fantastic songwriting. You will not be disappointed. Take it from Uncle Rex here. Take it from Keith. He's a fan. We are fans. I hope you guys enjoyed that. And again, please go search out Jive Mother Mary. That is Mason Keck, guitarist, vocalist. Really appreciate him coming on here. Hope you guys enjoyed that episode of Pod Scum. And remember, until we all get together again and do this again, to take it easy and please keep it sleazy.